Alright, welcome back to the channel. We are going to be discussing Map 8 AQ Section 1 complete breakdown, all fights, nodes, lane clearing nodes, boss killing nodes for Section 1, and counters to those paths, and breaking down each fight specifically. Now, one thing to note in general is that I will not be going over Nimrod. I have already extensively covered both Nimrod minis, and I will put that in the description of this video. And in the comment section will be timestamps for this map that you're going to see here, when that starts, and breaking down this map, as well as each path. There will be a timestamp for it in each video, and there will be 3 different videos for each section of Map 8. Now, the structure of Map 8... in Section 1, there are 7 paths, meaning there will be 3 people on backup, and there are 3 different sets of shared fights, A, B, and C, for this. And now, Red Goblin, Luke Cage, and Unstoppable Colossus each have a boss killer crossfight. They don't have any other nodes in particular that are frustrating on them other than their own abilities. So there really isn't much there to be discussed for that. This is just the layout of it, and this is not my image. This is made by Kat Murdoch, so credit to her. So you can go find her on Twitter. I don't know like where it's located, but that's who made this. Now on to the first part. Okay, so you can refer back to the map if you want to see all of the fights that have these 3 sets of nodes, which is going to be shared node A on Kat Murdoch's map. Bleed vulnerability, meaning they take 200% more damage when they're bleeding. Ebb and flow heavy, meaning they reduce damage by 60%, and you gotta knock them down and you'll get a cruelty passive, and the protection comes back in 12 seconds. Ticking time bomb isn't that important, but because most of the time people in AQ are going to be dead before ticking time bomb even comes into play. Champions like Nick Fury, Mole Man, Jabari Panther, and OG Black Panther, and other high damage bleed champs will be able to handily take care of these sets of nodes on shared fight A fights, and you will see what those are when you go back to the map in the comment section. Okay, shared fight B nodes are Flux Dispersal, Right Back at It, and Pull. Right Back at It is when you knock them down by a heavier special. They're debuffing in for 6 seconds. Pull, meaning non-contact attacks deal 100% more damage, and contact attacks deal 75% less damage. The big one to note here is Flux Dispersal, where each time you strike the defender, they reduce all damage by 5% until 100%, and that can go up to 20 times, and when it hits 20 times, when you strike them 20 times, they reduce all damage to 0, except for DOTs. Basically, you want to knock them down constantly. You'll have to wait out the Right Back at It for the 6 seconds. It's not that annoying, and the champions, the only frustrating fight with these node combos is Clairvoyant. She's just a bit longer, but they are not that hard in general to deal with. In my opinion, these 3 nodes are an absolute joke, but we're going to cover them anyway. The first one, you can't see it, it's Enhanced Special 1, where the first hit of the Special 1 is unblockable and does 30% more damage. And there's Power Focus 1, to where the defender gains 60% combat power rate while below a bar of power, but suffers minus 80% combat power rate when above it, and the attacker gets special locked when you acquire a bar of power. Basically, you just want to kill them through basic hits and not really rely on special attacks, so that's not really much of a problem. So just take it with basic attacks and you'll be fine. Okay, this is Path 1, and the lane killer fight is Visionary, so each time you purify a debuff, you gain a steadfast charge, and these charges let the attacker block unblockable and heavy attacks at the cost of 1 charge, and this lasts for the next 3 fights. So basically, whenever you purify a debuff, like if you're Mole Man, Kingpin, or Hitmonkey when you get your Primal Rage, you will get a Visionary charge, and that will allow you to block unblockable and heavy attacks. So that is pretty useful for the path. Now the path itself, the nodes aren't that tough. The only one to note here that will give you problems is Combat Deja Vu Unblockable, is when you land the same basic attack twice in a row, the defender goes unblockable for 6 seconds. So that can be annoying. The champions on this path start with Mr. Fantastic, then Invisible Woman, then Overseer, and then War Machine. So this isn't that bad of a path, but the defenders are annoying. Mr. Fantastic, the one thing to note is every non-damaging debuff on you or him gives him a flat 5% chance to evade per non-damaging debuff on you or him. So that's really the only thing to note, and he has unblockable specials anyway. War Machine, Invisible Woman, the only thing to note is her force field, and when her force field expires, she goes invisible. And whenever you knock her down, she has a chance to go invisible. Overseer, every time he throws a special 1 or 2, he will auto-block you. And War Machine, there's nothing really annoying with War Machine, he just has high armor rating. So the best champs of this path are going to be Nick Fury Mole Man, Hitmonkey, Jabari Panther, and champions that can Purify, debuffs, or deal with the unblockable effectively. Okay, Path 2 of Section 1 in AQ. The lane killer crossfight is Sufferance, where striking the defender while they're performing a heavy attack inflicts them with a Sufferance passive for 10 seconds, which is where damaging debuffs have 50% increased duration, and this lasts for three fights. That's a pretty good crossfight to have for these nodes in particular, and they are Heavy Baiter Protection, meaning every 7 seconds the defender gains a protection, reducing all damage by 10%, and you remove all attacks and interrupting the defender with a heavy. The defender's heavy, so you basically need to interrupt their heavy attack. Polka Dot Power is where you gain no power unless you put a damage over time debuff on them, and Rise to Power is when you knock them down. For 4 seconds, they will gain 50% of a bar of power when they strike your block. So, the champions on this fight, in terms of difficulty, are not that tough. Elsa Bloodstone, Shang-Chi, Blade, and Spider-Gwen. There are a few things to note here. Elsa, you do not want to bleed her, unless if you're a mutant. If you are a non-mutant and you bleed her, she will deal passive degen to you as long as she is bleeding if you are a non-mutant, so that is a problem. Shang-Chi is a joke. Blade, he shrugs off debuffs expire off of him faster the higher his power meter is, and he gains power passively when you're bleeding. And Spider-Gwen, she gets a higher chance to evade her Spider Sense charge, and she nullifies True Strike. So, the best champs for this fight, or path, I should say, the best champs to deal with this are probably going to be Venom. You don't want to use them against Elsa though. And probably another evade. Bring an evade counter to deal with this path, basically. Okay, Path 3 in Section 1. My personal AQ path is... This is the thing when you dash back, you gain a shield charge. When you intercept, you gain 2. And when you get 4, you have a 100% perfect block chance for 7 seconds. And this lasts for 3 fights. Pretty helpful for the nodes, which are Vital Strikes, Bob and Weave, and Lionheart. The most annoying node here is Bob and Weave, where all the defender's attacks are guaranteed crits, and this is disabled when you dash back, or when you dex an attack, or when you intercept them. And also they regen 250% of the block damage that you deal to them. So the fights are War Machine, Punisher, Cable, and Professor X. This path is very annoying because War Machine and Punisher and Cable, it's not easy to dex their special 1s. Their special 2s, excluding Punisher, is pretty easy, and Professor X is kind of annoying because of his Falter, which he gains after 10 seconds initially and then 20 seconds after. Hercules crushes this path. Really, you can do this path as long as you're good with intercepting or dashing back and have a counter to Professor X, and you'll be A-okay. Okay, Path 4 in Section 1. The lane killer is Shocking Defense. Well, while the defender is suffering from a shock, the attacker becomes stun immune, and this lasts for the next 3 fights. This is a pretty good crossfight for the path because the nodes they don't sound hard, but they can be if you don't know what to do against them, and here is what they are. Hard Head is when the attacker attempts to stun the defender, the stun is reflected back onto the attacker, and this goes on cooldown for 7 seconds. And also No Hit Mercy, when you knock them down, they gain a cruelty passive, and they also can crit you through the block. It's a chance, but it can happen. And then Fighting Dirty is when the defender throws a special, and then after it ends, they'll be unblockable for 6 seconds, and also during the special. So basically, unblockable specials and you can't stun them reliably. So ideally you want to bring a shock champ for this fight, because when they're shocked, they don't go unblockable when they throw a special. So the best champs for this fight, and Path with Stealth, Spidey, She-Hulk, Black Panther, OG, and Silver Surfer. Any shock champ will do fine. Venom will do fine here. Any champ will do fine as long as you are comfortable dexing any of their specials and know how to play against unblockable, and as long as you play them like they're stun immune, you'll be fine. Okay, Path 5 in Section 1. The crossfight is Frustratingly Furious. Each time the defender is immune to Nullify, the attacker gains a Frustration passive. Upon reaching 5 of these, the attacker becomes furious for 10 seconds, and when they're furious and the defender has a buff, each of the attacker's special attacks deals a burst of 50% of the damage dealt, and the effects of this node last for the next 3 fights. So basically, if the opponent's immune to Nullify, and you gain 5 Furious charges, and you become furious for 10 seconds, your specials will deal an extra 50% of your special damage, basically, when they are immune to Nullify. And the nodes on this fight, the most annoying one there is Steady Perseverance, is when they activate a special, they're stun immune for 6 seconds, and when you reach 2 bars of power, the defender gains 100% of a bar of power over 4 seconds. And then, if you are a Mystic attacker, there is a node called Divine Barrier, where when you're fighting as a Mystic, every 10 seconds on a timer, the defender is immune to Nullify, and the timer's duration is paused for 2 seconds each time the attacker nullifies a buff. So the fights on this path are Hulkbuster, Venom, Jubilee, and Nova. The most annoying fights on this path are Hulkbuster and Nova, because Hulkbuster, when you crit him, he will remove his armor up and shock you. And Nova can auto-block you when he has a Fury, and you try to intercept him, he will auto-block you. So basically, a champion who can take advantage of that lane killer crossfight or an auto-block counter is probably going to be the best for this path. Okay, Path 6 in Section 1. The lane killer crossfight is missing fixations. When the attacker builds focus by dashing back and holding block, and any focus built cannot be lost. And once the attacker has maintained 10 seconds of focus, they're fixated for 10 seconds, giving the defender's unblockable attacks a 100% chance to miss. And focus is gained 3 times faster when the defender is unblockable and can't be gained while fixated. So that helps for this, because there's turtling, meaning when the attacker hasn't landed a hit, in 6 seconds the defender gains a permanent armor up buff, increasing armor rating by 30% with a max of 3 stacks. And armored assault, when they get an armor up buff, they get 65% more attack and are passively unblockable. And Mystic Conditioning, whenever the attacker attempts to remove a buff with a Nullify, Fate Seal, and Stagger, that chance to make Nullify fail increases, but that chance to make it fail is increased by 20%. And the fights on this path are Doc Ock, Venom the Duck, Silver Surfer, and Killmonger. An Armor Break champion is going to be the best to deal with this path in general. If you don't have, just really any Armor Break champion is the best to deal with this path. Okay, Path 7 in Section 1. Unyielding Punishment is the lane killer crossfight, meaning the attacker's well-timed blocks inflict a debilitate charge, each increasing the duration of Bleed, Poison, Incinerate, Cold Snap, or Armor Break debuffs inflicted onto the defender by 50%, and there's a max stack of 3, and the effects of this node last for the next 3 fights. So basically what this allows you to do is, when you perform a parry or a well-timed block, you will get a debilitate charge, and you will increase the duration of your Bleed, Poison, Incinerate, Cold Snap, or Armor Break debuffs. So that is extremely helpful for some of these fights that you have to deal with as well as the nodes. Now the node here is Stellar Genetics, meaning every class but Cosmic has half of their attack, and Persistent Pressure. So the defender is stun immune when they are under the effects of Unstoppable, and every 15 seconds the defender goes unstoppable. And this also includes Unstoppable outside of that node in particular, and prowess buffs and passives reduce that chance by half a second per, and there's distract, so you need 3 or more debuffs to deal damage. This path is pretty tedious, but there are very easy ways to deal with it. The fights on this path are pretty difficult. Ronan and Venompool are a joke, but Hulkbuster is annoying. His special 1 is completely unblockable, and his special 2, the first of it, is initially unblockable. And Mysterio is a pain because what he does is his special 1, he'll put a damage reflect. He'll get a damage reflect, meaning every damage you'll deal, he'll heal and deal damage back to you. In the special 2, you get permanently power drained, and you have a 25% chance to miss while that is up. The best champs for this path are going to be champs with a lot of debuffs. Nick Fury, Mole Man, Apocalypse. Champs with a lot of debuffs are going to shine on this path and do extremely well. Okay. This is Overpower, so each time the defender fills a bar of power, the attacker gains an energized passive, increasing combat power rate by 100% for 7 seconds, and this can occur in the next fight, but not in the current fight. You can use this against the Nimrod when you're trying to clear Section 1, so this is actually pretty good to use against Nimrod, so that's pretty much what it does, and that's the end of this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell, and I'll be catching you very, very soon for the next 2 AQ breakdowns.